To truly grasp the significance of the Supreme Court's 2025 decision, it's essential to understand the economic tool at the heart of the controversy, the tariff. This isn't just a technical term, it's a powerful lever that can reshape entire economies and alter the balance of global trade. A tariff is, at its core, a tax placed on goods brought into the country from abroad. By making foreign products more expensive, tariffs are designed to encourage consumers to buy American-made goods, giving domestic industries a competitive edge and, in theory, protecting local jobs. For Donald Trump, tariffs weren't just policy, they were the backbone of his America First agenda. He argued that by imposing tariffs, the U.S. could shield its industries from unfair foreign competition, revive manufacturing, and bring jobs back to American soil. In April 2025, Trump's administration took a dramatic step, rolling out sweeping universal tariffs. These included a 10% reciprocal tariff on all imports and a targeted 20% fentanyl tariff, affecting major trading partners like Canada, China, and Mexico. The move sent shockwaves through global markets and upended decades of trade policy. The administration claimed these tariffs would do more than just protect American jobs. They argued tariffs would rebalance trade deficits, generate billions in new government revenue, and give the U.S. greater leverage in international negotiations. By October, the government announced it had collected a record $34.2 billion in a single month from these tariffs. In a bold move, the administration proposed a $2,000 dividend for every American family, framing it as a direct benefit of the new trade policy. Supporters hailed the tariffs as a bold, patriotic move, finally making foreign nations pay for access to the lucrative U.S. market and putting American interests first. But critics saw things very differently. They argued this was presidential overreach, a massive hidden tax on American importers and consumers, and a violation of the Constitution's clear grant of taxing power to Congress, not the president. The legal battle that followed wasn't just about economics or trade policy. At its core, it was a fight over the separation of powers and the fundamental limits of executive authority. The central question: could the president, acting alone, impose such sweeping tariffs on the nation's behalf, or did that power rest solely with Congress, as the Constitution intended? With the stakes higher than ever, the stage was set for a Supreme Court showdown, one that would not only decide the fate of Trump's tariffs, but also redefine the boundaries of presidential power for generations to come. On December 1, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered a seismic ruling that sent shockwaves through the nation's legal and political landscape. In a landmark decision, the justices declared that Trump's universal tariffs were unconstitutional, striking down a central pillar of his trade policy. In a decisive 6-3 vote, Chief Justice Roberts wrote the majority opinion, stating that the president had crossed a constitutional line, imposing what amounted to a legislative act reserved for Congress. The ruling emphasized the importance of maintaining the separation of powers at the heart of the Constitution. The court affirmed that while presidents can impose targeted tariffs for national security reasons, they cannot use narrow statutes as a backdoor to enact sweeping economic changes that affect the entire country. The Dow Jones surged over 500 points as markets welcomed the return of stability and predictability, signaling renewed investor confidence in the rule of law. Industries reliant on imports, retail, tech, and autos, breathed a collective sigh of relief, anticipating lower costs and fewer disruptions to their supply chains. The decision capped months of intense legal challenges, with lower courts and business groups persistently arguing that the tariffs were illegal and harmful to American businesses. During oral arguments, justices were openly skeptical of the administration's legal logic, questioning the breadth of presidential power claimed under existing trade laws. The final ruling set a powerful precedent. The authority to tax and regulate trade on a national scale belongs to Congress, not the Oval Office, reaffirming the legislative branch's constitutional role. The decision forced a fundamental rethinking of presidential authority in trade, sending a clear message about the limits of executive power and reshaping the balance between the branches of government for years to come. The Trump administration's legal defense relied on broad interpretations of old laws. They cited Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, meant for targeted national security tariffs, and the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, i.e. EPA, designed for acute crises. Trump's team argued that economic threats justified sweeping action. The Supreme Court disagreed, ruling that these statutes couldn't be stretched to justify a universal tariff plan. The justices drew a line. Targeted temporary actions are allowed, but wholesale economic restructuring is Congress's job. Using emergency powers for long-term trade policy was rejected outright. The court reaffirmed the power of the purse starts and ends with Congress. The court's decision had immediate, real-world effects for American families. Contrary to popular belief, tariffs are paid by U.S. importers, not foreign countries, and those costs trickle down to consumers. Studies showed that tariffs could have cost the average family $2,000 a year, raising prices on everything from coffee to cars. The ruling averted a wave of inflation, sparing families from higher costs on everyday goods. For businesses, especially small ones, the tariffs threatened survival, forcing tough choices like layoffs or price hikes. Companies like Deer Stags and Green Bar Distillery faced huge new costs, threatening jobs and investment. The Supreme Court's decision provided relief, restoring stability and predictability for businesses and workers. It preserved jobs in retail, logistics, and manufacturing by keeping supply chains intact. For millions, the ruling wasn't just about constitutional theory, it was about economic survival. The court's verdict was a lifeline for households and small businesses alike. The Supreme Court's ruling sparked fierce debate across the country. Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, hailed it as a victory for the rule of law and a check on executive overreach. Trump and his allies condemned the decision, calling it a betrayal of American workers and an act of judicial activism. Business groups and major retailers celebrated, relieved to avoid massive cost increases and uncertainty. For them, the ruling meant stability and the ability to plan ahead. However, some domestic manufacturers, especially in steel and textiles, were disappointed, losing the protection tariffs provided. Workers in those industries worried about renewed foreign competition. The decision highlighted the reality that trade policy creates both winners and losers. The national debate over protectionism versus free trade was far from settled. The court's decision sent shockwaves through key industries, with the auto and retail sectors feeling the effects almost immediately. The ruling was more than just a legal milestone, it was a lifeline for businesses already navigating a turbulent economic landscape. Modern car manufacturing depends on intricate global supply chains, where even a small tariff can ripple through the entire system. Tariffs would have raised costs on every imported part, threatening not just profits but also the jobs of thousands of workers and the affordability of vehicles for American families. The ruling prevented sudden price hikes and mass layoffs, preserving the competitiveness of American-assembled cars in a global market. It also reassured workers and consumers that stability would return, at least for now. Retailers, too, were spared from passing on massive new costs to consumers or absorbing losses that could shutter small stores. For many small business owners, the decision meant the difference between staying open and closing their doors for good. The decision also raised thorny questions about refunds. Over $215 billion had already been collected in tariffs. Would the government have to pay it all back, and if so, how would that process even begin? Treasury officials warned of a potential trillion-dollar refund crisis, a scenario that could strain federal finances and spark political battles in Washington. Importers argued that refunds were feasible, but the logistics were daunting. Processing claims, verifying payments, and coordinating with thousands of businesses would be a massive undertaking. The court's ruling set the stage for a complex and lengthy process to determine if and how businesses would be reimbursed. Legal teams and government agencies braced for months, if not years, of negotiations and paperwork. For now, the decision brought relief and a sense of clarity to industries that had been teetering on the brink of crisis. Workers, business owners, and consumers alike could finally breathe a little easier. Yet, the future of trade policy and its far-reaching economic fallout remained uncertain, leaving everyone watching for the next move. The Supreme Court's ruling redrew the boundaries of presidential power in trade. For decades, Congress had ceded authority to the executive branch for speed and flexibility. Now, any future president seeking sweeping tariffs must get explicit approval from Congress. Major trade policy will require public debate, committee hearings, and votes, not unilateral action. This shift promises more predictability for global partners and a return to rules-based trade. The decision could open the door to renewed negotiations and stronger alliances. But the core debate, protectionism versus free trade, remains unresolved. The battleground now moves to Congress, where lawmakers must forge a new consensus. The court clarified who writes the rules, but not which rules are best for America. The Supreme Court's decision is a landmark in American governance. It reaffirmed that Congress, not the president, holds the power to impose broad taxes and regulate commerce. The ruling set a clear limit on executive authority, ensuring major economic changes require public debate and legislative consent. For Americans, the impact was immediate: relief from higher prices and economic uncertainty. The case showed how constitutional checks and balances protect everyday citizens. The legacy of United States versus Importers Coalition is clear. The power to shape the nation's economy belongs to the people's representatives. In the end, the authority to write America's economic rules rests with Congress, not the pen of a president.